Good evening. This is the council meeting for Monday, September 14th, 2020 for the Borough of Crafton. Next. To begin, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute. Mr. Melo,
Here.
Mr. Amendola, Mr. Kraus,
Here.
Mr. Crown,
Here.
Mr. Lavasser,
Here.
Ms. Perry,
Here.
Mr. Saba,
He's absent.
okay. Mayor Bloom,
Here.
Mr. Corbel,
I'm here.
Mr. Minsterman,
I'm here.
and I am here. You do have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Ayala, just let me know if we have anybody in the room when we get there for the citizen comments. I'm going to move forward with the approval of the bills list for September 14th, 2020.
So moved.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All that oppose? Thank you for the approval of the bill list. Approval of the minutes for August 24th, 2020.
So moved.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All that oppose? Approval of the minutes. Thank you. At this time, please note that all public comments will be heard at the beginning of the meeting due to the online format. At this time, citizens may address the Borough Council. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Please state your name and physical address for the record.
Right now, we have Mary Luxbacher who has her hand raised, Mr. President.
Right. Mary, you're recognized.
Okay. Mary Luxbacher, 71 Dinsmore Avenue, and in Crafton, obviously. As I was speaking right now as member of the rec board, and I did want to report to council that we had our final summer mini golf as a fundraiser for the Crafton Public Library. And for the year, we inched over 400 people, and that was just in the 2 months. So I did want you to know that we were able to, we had, I think, a very successful season. And we will also hopefully be doing spooky mini golf, which has become a tradition over the last couple of years in Crafton, and that will be posted on Citizen Savvy. What weekend will start in October. Additionally, we are looking for homes or houses or areas in Crafton that may have a haunted aspect to them, or a fun spooky story, or it could be a scary spooky story. I personally grew up down on Steuben Street in one of the old Victorian mansions, and we have at least 3 fun but scary out to us at the time stories that we would love to be able to share with others that night. And we'd like to collect as many of these stories as possible, and have a route set up so that people can do something fun and something a little different on Halloween, during the Halloween season this year. And I'd also like to encourage other people to donate to the library. This is their month when all donations are matched, and that's one reason we held a fundraiser for them with mini golf, so that any money we took in that day will be matched. And just encourage everyone to please get out and support your Crafton Public Library. That's all.
Thank you so much, Mary.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
There's nobody currently. Oh, wait, I take that back. Someone just raised their hand. Julianne Slodge. I'm sorry if I'm butchering her name.
Julianne?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Julianne Slogic. I'm at 24 Duncan Avenue. And I was hoping to hear the agenda and the reports first before commenting, because I'm really not, without hearing that, I'm not quite sure of the appropriate response at this time. But I would like to speak up as a resident who lives down in the Afton community near the park. My understanding is that there are ongoing conversations that involve the school board to discuss the possibility of development near or on the property that's currently used as the miniature golf site, as well as the fields. Can I ask you a question? Is that an accurate understanding?
There have been discussions between the school board and the borough. There's no action at this time.
Okay, so I just want to take then one moment to say one word. You know, my husband and I live here in Crafton because we adore our neighborhood, our small neighborhood near the park. And we've, very intentionally decided to raise our children here. And the reason that I'm calling in for the first time after being a resident in Crafton for maybe roughly about 10 years now is because I'm very concerned to hear that there's talk of some kind, again, from what you've told me, this isn't formal conversation at this point, but that there is conversation about the possibility of a convenience store, a get-go possibly under consideration. And I have to tell you, that's extremely concerning to me and to my family. And if I can extend that to other members of our neighborhood down here. As the conversations proceed for development, I think it's super significant that we remember that this area is home to families and many children who are visiting the park and the pool on a regular basis. And I have concerns when I hear that there's large scale development that could potentially lead to, I'm especially concerned about crime. I know that I have heard from somewhat reliable sources that the 79 route is a route for drug exchanges in this area and criminal activity. And so I don't want to take up a lot of your time because now I understand that this isn't possibly at the moment a formal conversation, but I really want to encourage this board. I know that you are wanting to develop Crafton, and I think that's commendable. But I want to encourage you as you're doing these plans, and I will be continuing to follow your activity here. I want to encourage you to think about our families, because I think Crafton is a wonderful community. I think it's a wonderful community to raise children in. I would not want to see that development fail to take into consideration the very safety of the family. I'm sorry, of this family and children that are here. So I thank you for your time, and we will continue to follow your activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. And just so everybody knows in the community, the Planning Commission is having community visioning sessions over the next several weeks. So I encourage everybody to participate. And I believe they just launched a survey. So Julianne and your neighbors, I hope you take the opportunity to participate in that and help guide us in our future development ideas and things that we want to see done in the borough. So thank you very much for your comment this evening.
Well, that information, is that on our website?
the survey. I believe it was posted, but I have to check in with Russ and Charisma on that. I know it came out on Savvy Citizen, or was going to be posted to Savvy Citizen. Russ, can you double check it on that for us? Just make sure it's posted. I'll check with Jacqueline on the website, and I believe it was posted on Savvy Citizen, but I was away last week.
I will. This is the first I was aware of that survey. I didn't hear anything from Lydia on it, but I will definitely check in.
All right, thank you. All right. Ed, do we have anybody else for citizen comments?
No, there's nobody else with their hand raised.
Okay, moving on to the president's report. We had a brief executive session to discuss various real estate and potential litigation and litigation matters. Outside of that, I don't have anything else to report. On to the mayor's report.
Yes, I'd just like to report that last week in the Oregon, Lincoln, Division Street area, there were numerous vehicles that were rifled through by someone that we don't know, because it was going on in the middle of the night. Encourage all the residents to make sure you lock your vehicle at night before you turn in, and keep all valuables out of your vehicles, and particularly any firearms that may be in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving forward to the engineer's report.
Yes, no specific additions to the submitted report, but certainly available for any questions. We have an engineering meeting tomorrow to go over all of the projects and statuses. So nothing to add to the report that's been submitted.
Okay. All right, thank you. Could just ask you a couple questions about timelines, give residents that live in the South Grandview area just what the expectations should be for the next month for the construction phases down there?
Yeah, good question. I talked to Borough today about it. What they're trying to do is to block, take a certain section of the roadway out. So you have to remove all the brick, the curbs, all of the infrastructure that's there gets removed. Then it's backfilled with a gravel base and then bindered, and the curbs are installed. So the idea, since you can access both sides of that portion of Grandview from either end, is to take out probably the length of about 4 houses. So 4 houses on each side will lose the street and access to their driveways for about a week. That's the general estimation of time from the time the road is closed, like as described, demolished, curbs are out, backfilled, curbs are installed, and the wearing course is the only thing that doesn't get installed. So the binder, the base course will be installed, and then they'll move on to the next section. So for about a week period, those folks will have to find different locations to park. Obviously, up or downstream from where their home is still available. So they're trying to keep just a small area of limited access to homes. The sidewalks will still be available to walk, obviously. The project itself, probably at least another 4 weeks total, to get to a
Is that with the
point where we're
add-on?
ready to place the wearing and that top surface.
Does that include the add-on that we approved at the last meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about specifically when I say they're taking out chunks.
Did everybody on the
400.
add-on has been notified? They're aware.
That if I may interject,
Yep.
that has been taken care of. The contractor's been put on notice that there you have to do a better job of notification, including my office. But irrespective of that, going forward, we received some valid complaints about how they move forward without anybody knowing about it. And that has been addressed. And if it's not addressed, I'll readdress it.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody, it's about 4 more weeks of short-term pain for long-term gain there, and we appreciate everybody's cooperation this summer, the past month and a half on that project. Thank you very much. All right, moving forward to the solicitor's report.
The report this evening, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Manager's report.
I'll be very brief. Just a quick update on some projects going on. I think most people have seen the new traffic poles put in place. We have one minor issue left before they'll all be installed. That's being addressed as we speak. The pole liner and that we have a meeting on Friday to finalize everything there. That was picked out by the rec board, and that work should be starting forthwith. And we've already discussed the Grandview project as to where it's going and what needs to happen there to make the residents as comfortable as possible going forward. That's all I have.
Thanks, Russ. With regards to the timelines for the new signals being turned on and the demolition of the existing, the historical items, when do you think the project will wrap up? Is there a rough timeline?
Well, if we didn't have the one issue at the one intersection, it probably would have been wrapped up in a week. But we need to take care of one intersection and redo the sidewalk and ramp. But I would say 2 weeks at the most, and they should all be operational. Okay.
And from what I understand, engineer and manager, the new signals actually are going to provide some additional functionality for first responders. Is that accurate? That all the everything is up to date now and
yeah, they are fitted with mechanisms on top that the public safety personnel can activate so that they get a green light going forward. Both the fire department and police department will be involved in that, and they'll have that capability.
That's wonderful. Thank you. All right. I'm going to move forward to the business agenda, and we don't have anything under business. This is the discussion meeting. So under the discussion items, we have the fire inspection form and fee proposal. Do we have Mr. Beardmore available this evening? Mr. Crown, are you aware of the fire commissioners available this evening?
I think the fire marshal was. I believe he said that he got a code off Russ, if I wasn't mistaken.
There is an Andrew Jones that raised his hand. Is that maybe his middle name or?
Yeah, his hand is up.
Okay. All right. Can we have him, add him as a, hold on, let me see if, can I add him as a participant? Let me see if I can add him. Promote to, everybody all right if I promote him as a panelist? I'm going to promote as a panelist.
Sure, that's fine.
All right. Andrew, you're now a panelist. All right.
Okay, yeah, that is my middle name. I think that you can hear me now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I did submit a fire inspection form that we would send out to all of the businesses. It's like a pre-inspection form for them to get ready for it. The plan was to send those out sometime in October, so we'd give them a chance, a checklist to go through. So whenever we come, there aren't as many problems. Obviously, that isn't fully encompassing of the fire inspection program, but that's the main points, and also typically the violations we would find against the fire code. The other thing that I submitted to Russ was the manager Russ's, the fee proposal. I submitted two different ones, one based on the use of the occupancy and one on the size of the occupancy. The reason is you could have a larger building like a high-rise building that has a lot of square footage, but we're not going into the individual apartments. And then you could have an industrial setting that is equal size, but would obviously we'd be going into that whole building, so it would take more time. So the fee would be increased. So there's two different proposals there. different municipalities are using both of those. So, you know, like some of them are using the size, and then some are using the use. And obviously that would be revised depending on how many hours we're using once we know, since this would be new for Crafton Borough. But those are the two things that I had for review, and then we're working in the background on our system to do these, and that should be functional soon.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Crown, do you have anything to add to the conversation?
Not really. I talked to Mr. Beardmore and Manager McKibbins probably about a month ago. We sat down to go over some of these things. I think that's a will of council which way we want to do with the fee schedule. I can ask Andrew, when were you looking to start the first inspections?
So I think it would be best to start at the beginning of the year. And then we discussed doing the occupancies that we see the highest hazard. So those we'd start with the education facilities, some of the larger assembly facilities, and then we'd move down to like churches and those things where we have large assemblies, where the risk to the public is more. And then the triplexes and above, I think, is the least risk for the general public. So those would go last. And this is every 2 years. So we really have 2 years to get all the properties. So I don't think it'd be a good idea to get them all in a single year, because then every other year after that, we would have all of them, and the next year we wouldn't have any. So, but I think the way to move forward is with the largest or the most hazardous occupancies that we have.
And if I recall the ordinance, I think the commercial was due 1 year and residential the alternate year. Is my recollection correct?
I read over the ordinance a few times now, and it just says every other year for all of them, unless there has been an update that I'm not aware of.
I think it was our discussion, and maybe not written precisely in the ordinance. So it was discussion that we had when we were putting the ordinance together, to say that was kind of the intention. Thank you.
Yeah. If I may just jump in very quickly. Thank you, Andrew, by the way. We did have a meeting, the chief and Andrew and I, and again, the priority is those areas that have many people either living or getting or organizing in each structure, or the known offenders that are out there right now. I think I said it before, I'll say it again. I truly believe this is very important. And the idea in the ordinance is that they would become borough employees. Andrew made a very good guess as to how much time it would take each of them to do these inspections, and have made a fee structure accordingly. We may have to tweak this down the road. I'm not sure. I don't think any of us know at this point. But the very idea that this will start to take place is an important step for especially a lot of the commercial establishments in the borough, based on what the fire department has seen and what has been reported to me.
Thank you. So is there any action that we need to take as a council at the next meeting? Is it the fee schedule that we need to take action on? Is that what we need to fully discuss here?
We'll discuss that. I don't think it'll be an action item this month. I think we'll go back over everything. Just want to give you an idea of what's going on. If everybody's on board, we'll look down and we'll tweak it a little bit. Again, as Andrew indicated, it's probably not going to be implemented till the 1st of 2021. We do have a little time, and we really don't want to jump ahead yet. We don't even have a budget in place or any idea where we're going to be. So, but the idea of it at least moving forward is good.
Thank you. All right, Manager, you've got the next item here on the Resolution 2020-15 adoption of 2021 pension MMO.
Yeah, strictly a informational item. We have our MMOs that was sent to us for 2021. They'll be in the budget. They are a little higher than last year. And that's just the nature of the beast, I guess, at this point. Moreover, we were a little low on our estimates. I did not get the relief monies yet in, so I don't know how that's going to work out for 2020. But these are the fees that we have to put into both the police pension fund and the non-uniform fund under law. The nice thing is we are considered 99% funded, which is terrific, which means we have a very solid and well-funded pension fund and not running into issues that many other municipalities have to deal with as to how they're going to deal with unfunded pension plans. We do not have that problem.
Thank you. All right, on to the next item, if I may. Russ? Okay. This is a consideration to expand ordinance 1634. This ordinance pertains to the raising of chickens to include the R2 residential district. It came to me through a realtor that a prospective buyer has a contract on a property in an R2 with a very large lot and another adjacent lot that's vacant. And I believe the solicitor's done some research. We permit for the chickens in R1, but we're not permitting them in the R2. And I would propose that we put lot restrictions on R1 and R2 to provide for the raising of chickens in those areas. Again, I think there are probably a dozen or less properties that have these types of arrangements. Again, I believe the ordinance was considered 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I don't recall the exact time frame. So we haven't really had many concerns. I think the people that had the chickens in R1 have been pretty happy. The neighbors have been. I don't believe we received a lot of complaints. But to facilitate the conversation and to work with the folks in R2 with the larger lots, I think we should consider putting a lot size restriction. Solicitor Corbell, could you speak to the current ordinance and any kind of lot size restrictions?
Yeah, so the current ordinance, it only pertains to R1. It's a fairly standard urban chicken ordinance, I guess, for the lack of a better term. I think that it would make sense if you would like to extend it without many changes. But, if we're amending the zoning ordinance, we're going to have to go through Planning Commission and get their input, et cetera. And that's a place where we could learn more about, particular nuances or unique issues with the properties in the R2 district. So, I mean, if council is amenable to moving forward, maybe just put we usually direct me to prepare and advertise these by motion at meetings. And if you want to put that on the agenda for next week, that can get the ball rolling. Obviously, it's not a commitment to vote for anything at this point, but it would at least get that ball rolling so we can look at that issue a little closer, have the Planning Commission weigh in, et cetera.
Yeah, and come up with a reasonable lot restriction for R1 and R2, because some of these R1 lots, if you actually look at the square footage of these lots, some of these lots are mostly occupied by structure and don't have much of a yard. So we probably could tighten that up a bit and make it a little more equitable for the folks in R2.
Mr. President, very quickly, the lot restrictions in R1 are already in the ordinance. So
They are?
They're already there.
Okay, okay. Do you know what that restriction is?
I do indeed.
Yeah, my point was that we would determine whether or not the R2 restrictions would need to be different given the unique nature of, and that sort of thing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Russ, you can go ahead and tell us. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, no problem. 2,000 square feet gets 2 chickens. I'm sorry. 3,000 square feet gets 4 chickens, and of course, no roosters.
Okay. Mayor, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I did.
Alrighty.
When I just thinking about this, permitting people to have chickens in R2 is going to become a police issue where the neighbor doesn't like the clucking chickens of the person that put the chickens. You have to consider that would be an issue, where the people that have chickens now, it's in all R1. So you might want to have to consider that. Thank you.
Thanks. Coletta and then Mike.
All right, thank you. I live fairly close to people who keep chickens, and one of the things that I notice is they're not as loud as dogs, and I notice that they're penned in, unlike dogs. And we seem to, in our ordinance, we do not disallow, or we do not allow roosters, but we put no control over the number of dogs or their genders. So, I guess I'm wondering why there's so much concern about chickens when we don't have the same level of concern about dogs or cats or anything else. Thank you.
All right, Mike, thank you. Coletta.
I'm just flabbergasted that we're sitting here like really talking about this. I think that something like this should go on a list, and once or twice a year we pass a group of ordinances instead of every time somebody comes to somebody, we want to change the ordinances, the laws of the Crafton Borough. Put it on the list. Everybody agrees it goes on an ordinance list, and then we revisit. It's cheaper for us in the long run to do something like that. And then we do all the ordinances and upgrade them and update them at once instead of piecemeal throughout a year or out of a certain time period. If they want chickens, that doesn't matter. I think it's the process that we can't just, somebody asks for something, we jump right to it, spend a lot of money. We did that on some zoning for a brewery going in. A lot of money was spent in fees, advertisement, attorney's fees, and it didn't go through. So I think that we should just let this thing sit, put it on the list of when we're going to do an ordinance change, to add it in there and advertise them all at the same time and pass them at the same time. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Mike. Coletta?
So it's my understanding that this request has to do with the sale of a piece of property and residents who would like to move into this borough. And I guess my question is, would you want the same response to let it wait for as long as a year if it was your sale?
So somebody's not moving into the borough of Crafton because they can't have a couple chickens.
Yeah, from what I understand, the circumstances that people have chickens at their existing home. They're in the process of buying, and they want to be legal, and they want to bring them here, and they bought a sizable lot, and they didn't realize that there was this restriction on the R2. So, at any rate, that's how it came to our attention, and I believe the solicitor and the manager have a mechanism to, let's say, if we were to wait, to have some type of conditional permit, etc. Steve or Russ?
Yeah, we can use the pending ordinance doctrine if that's what council would like. We've done that in the past.
Can't they get a variance of the ordinance?
They could get a variance, yes. We also, if we're going to move forward in this direction, I talked to Philip and Russ about, sort of a conditional zoning permit that would permit it for a short period of time until council was able to consider it, or, using Mr. Crown's example of just passing a couple ordinances every so often, you could do it that way too.
Thank you. Mr. Krause, you've had your hand raised.
Yeah, I agree with both Mr. Crown on his point of the process, but I also agree with Ms. Perry as well. I think they both raise excellent points. I guess where I stand would be that we already have a chicken ordinance on the books. Is that correct?
Yes.
I think the answer is yes, right? And so while I don't always feel comfortable with the process of kind of doing things in a piecemeal fashion, as Mike said, I do understand that maybe it would have behooved the past councils or even this current council a few months ago to try to normalize those ordinances so they match across designations R1 to R2. Because, you know, across the street from that, you know, on the other side of Steuben would be R1 and they'd have a chicken, and this over there, you know, would not. So it seems to me illogical from that perspective. So I agree with Coletta's point that if that is holding up a sale, you know, it seems to be perfunctory at best. And so I would think that it would be something that we could do to just normalize it under this circumstance, and then in future councils or maybe create a policy so that we can work more comprehensively and less in a piecemeal fashion.
Thank you. Mike, did you have your hand raised again?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well,
I have
thank
a
you.
question, Philip.
Yes. Yes.
What is do we currently have a permanent process for the chickens?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for, as somebody that lives in an area that's designated R2, I am all for letting people in R2, because I know there are some properties that have large tracts of land in R2 and then some that have itty bitty tracts. And I'm all for letting people in R2 have chickens as long as, you know, we are respectful and understanding of being all neighbors and adding that square foot requirement.
Yeah, and I believe there's training or a course that they have to take, etc. It's the ordinance from a few years ago had quite a few requirements to get the permit. Is that correct, Solicitor Corwell and Manager McKibben?
Yeah, chicken school is required.
That's in the ordinance. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Is that, I'm sorry to interrupt it, is that a serious thing Russ just said, chicken school?
Yes.
Yes.
That sounds like a 1980s movie, I'm sorry.
I'm not making that up.
Cluck-U University, yep. All right, so it sounds as if, Steve, you have permission to move forward with getting that ready for us. All right, next, manager and the engineer, the review of Gateway Engineer's work authorizations.
These are just informational items. These will be voted on at the next meeting. These are work authorizations that have been discussed and already basically pre-authorized, but it's just a formal work authorization. The pool, Grandview Avenue, wetlands down by the Public Works, and Noble Park, and the improvements at the parks. Just work authorizations for their engineering fees involved in all four of those.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about any of those items? Down in the valley where the wetlands study will be, that's for all the parcels that are owned by the borough, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Yep.
Sorry.
Yes.
So that is for a study and not any work that's being done on the wetlands? Is that
right? That's just to evaluate whether or not they're present or not.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, on to the next item, revisit of proposed discrimination ordinance. Mr. Saba wasn't able to make it this evening.
I'll take up the mantle,
Okay.
Mr. Lavasser. So as you all may recall, just a brief procedural history. In the fall, winter of last year, then Council President Ms. Perry instructed our solicitor to draft a proposed ordinance, a non-discrimination or some may refer to as an equal opportunity ordinance. It was drafted and presented to us. I want to say it was pre-COVID, so I want to say late January, early February, that we got a chance to actually read the words on the paper. My understanding, we brought it up briefly again pre-COVID and talked about workshopping it, but it really seemed that the main issue that many council members wanted to discuss was the enforcement provisions and how we as a borough would go about enforcing that. It's kind of languished a little bit since then, and I feel that it's important that we try and pick up this mantle again and kind of push forward with some very important it's important to me because as someone that was until recently able to be fired for being gay, I feel very passionate about this. So I really would like to open up the table. I think Mr. Corbel might be able to talk to us a little bit more about it and refresh our recollection about our enforcement options. But I think it was we as a collective form another commission and appoint members. We pass an ordinance without an enforcement provision. And I think there was the option for somehow wrangling in the county's commission. Mr. Solicitor, I don't know if you can correct me on any of that.
Yeah, so it's modeled after ordinances that have been passed in Mount Lebanon and Ross Township, creating a ordinance that prohibits discrimination in employment and housing and public accommodation. And it's enforced by an appointed equal opportunity board, I think is how it's been drafted. And that's a group of residents. I believe I drafted to have 5 members here in Crafton. And they would sit and, if someone in the community would file a complaint, it would go to that board and the board would process the complaint. It would be, the board should probably have its own attorney. They should have a set of internal operating procedures. To the extent that the borough did not want to take that on, I know that Mount Lebanon and Ross have reached out to other entities that investigate similar discriminatory practices, either at the county or the state level, and to try to work on a work sharing agreement, if you will. I'm not sure any of those have been signed yet. Pardon me, but I do know that's an option. I'm not aware of complaints that have been received in either municipality at this point. At least in Ross, what I'm familiar with is our Equal Opportunity Board is doing more outreach and training and offering programming to local businesses and residents to try and help broaden folks' perspective on this issue. But that's basically, I think, an overview of the enforcement mechanism. Ed, I'm not sure if I'm missing something or you wanted me to touch on something different, but there are still gaps in what is protected under federal, state, and local law. And so it's not as if this ordinance is superfluous or some policy statement by council. It would be effective and would help protect folks from being discriminated against or not receiving the appropriate public accommodations that they're entitled to on a host of protected classifications. So that's all I have, unless there's questions or you need me to talk about something else.
Mr. Kraus, your hand's up.
Yes. So being as though that the ordinance itself would be intended to have an effect in enforcement, from my understanding of what you just summarized, there would be a board appointed, which would have an attorney, so to speak, or some other work sharing agreement with a larger entity to provide those services. But what happens after a complaint is received and it is adjudicated, and it would be in the, let's say, the negative sense of the of the outcome, you know, what would the borough's liability be vis-a-vis this ordinance?
I mean, to the extent that the Equal Opportunity Board made a determination that there was discriminatory activity, it could go to common pleas court to get an order to stop it if the business did not. I believe that there were fines, et cetera, in the ordinance as well. You know, ultimately, if there is a complaint that's received that's found to be not founded, et cetera, I believe there's a mechanism where a letter would be issued that would say to, say, an employee who complained that they were discriminated against because of their disability. The board could look into it, determine that they can't make a decision or there's not enough evidence, and then that individual would have a right to sue under the ordinance in common pleas court. I really don't see this as an issue where the borough is going to be under the gun or held liable for these types of issues, quite frankly.
So it would just feed into the extending the
Court system.
The court system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
If I may just quickly, I mean, one of the options is a recommendation to the PA Human Relations Commission, and the reasons why, to give a little bit more bite to the complaint if they find that there is a violation. But I think the problem that the municipalities that have adopted this are having is that there is language in these ordinances that allow for this commission or this board, Equal Opportunity Board, to levy fines of $10,000, $25,000, and $50,000. An area that, unlike the zoning board, doesn't have the ability. They can say yes or no, but they don't have the ability to impose fines. And I think that's the tricky part of this ordinance that the municipalities that have adopted it are wrestling with. Steve can maybe interject on that. But
we're not wrestling with that in Ross, but this is you know, you guys can decide if you want to do that. It's not a mandatory part of the ordinance. It's just a mechanism. I think you're better served to go to court and get a court order to stop the activity than you would be to levy a fine. But, you know, we left that in order to allow those types of options to be on the table.
Question. Who levies the fine and who receives the fee?
The
Right.
Equal Opportunity Board would issue the fine and it would go into the borough treasury.
But who would be like, let's say the person that has been like, who's being fined, the municipality or the person?
The person.
The person.
The offending
Okay.
individual or entity. I mean, anything that the borough does in that regard is going to be appealed to court anyway. So yeah, that's why, you know, if you wanted to have one that didn't have a fine structure, I wouldn't object to it, or I wouldn't tell you you're missing out here. But all of these things are going to end up in court anyway. So I don't view that as a risk. I mean, you're not being sued, right? It's going to court because you know, the action is being taken there by the complainant, et cetera. Or if you're going to seek an order of court to prohibit the discriminatory conduct, you know, the borough is going to foot the bill to enforce it.
Okay. Mr. Kraus, your hand was raised.
Yeah, I think I have a question for Mr. McKibben here. He touched on something and it went kind of past me really quickly. So if we could rewind a bit, you said that there was in some communities like a handoff of the instead of having a local board appointed, there would be like a state level board. Is that correct? Or did I misunderstand that?
I'm sorry, maybe I misspoke. No, they're ending their involvement at making a recommendation to the Human Relations Commission, the PA HRC. They are not getting into the fine area or anything else like that, like Steve mentioned. But they then would forward the complaint saying they have found it to be valid, and as a board have said, HRC, here's an issue. Please come in and take a strong look at it.
I see. Okay.
This is kind of like that work sharing arrangement that I referenced, right? Where the board's saying to the state entity, hey, you know, we found that there's enough here. Can you take it from here? Which they have the experience to do that more so than 5 residents of the borough of Crafton.
Well, that was my follow-up question would be, if we appoint residents on other boards, at least on my time on council, we've seen, there is always some turnover on boards and, folks have other things happening. So, it would come down to, I would have to wonder who would actually be, who would have that experience to determine, because I think some of this stuff could possibly be, depending on the perspective of the whole person on the board, it could be in the eye of the beholder. And I would wonder how that would resolve itself. So I would feel more comfortable if we had residents say, let's kind of adjudicate this through the state. And if there is a way, to do that kind of thing, I would think it would help out residents who maybe don't feel empowered to know if they're in the right or wrong.
So, Steve, if I may play devil's advocate going off of Brad's point, if we proceed with the ordinance without a enforcement provision like a commission or fines or anything of that nature, would we be creating a right for our residents or people employed within the borough not to be able to file claims based on this ordinance?
Yes.
So, in fact, they'd be able to use our common police system to be able to adjudicate their rights without the boroughs, without a board or a commission.
Well, no. They would still have to, the way it's drafted, they would still have to file the complaint with the borough, and it could be processed thereafter. But if you, we could look at it in a different way. But what I've been, when I've worked on this in the past, it was explained to me that the goal was to have a consistent scheme throughout the Commonwealth, so that to ensure that the ordinances themselves are they're defensible, and that too many changes could put you on a different footing than another community that passed it, and it could result in your ordinance not being valid or another's being invalid, right? So the understanding that I have is that these ordinances have been reviewed and tested, and there's a pretty strong confidence that they're defensible and constitutional, et cetera. And the argument made to me was that you should keep it as close as you can.
So would the commission, if we take fines out of it, would the commission in essence kind of give complainants a ticket to a common police court in a sense?
Yeah, I think so. It would be like giving them right to sue letters would be what I would relate it to at the EEOC or PHRC level.
So kind of like the blind man and the elephant, that if we put our residents on a commission, they may not know exactly what it is.
Well, they're going to have legal advice.
They'll know it when we'll.
You'll have a legal advisor, right? Like not everybody on this board, this council is an expert on zoning laws, but you're still here to help make decisions and make changes, and you ask your professionals. And I will say in other communities, there was, they felt it was important to have members of the community stand in judgment of, others in their community, rather than deferring it to a county board or a state or federal agency. And there was a thought process that the people in Crafton should understand the ordinance and the values in Crafton, and they should be the ones that apply it and determine if there's been bad behavior. Awkward pause, but I don't know if I have anything else for me to say.
I was hoping to hear from as many members of council to kind of see and get an idea of enforcement wise where we would like to see this go. It sounds like the fines may get us into some hot, muddy water that we might not want to get into. But I mean, personally, I just want to make sure that anybody that has or experiences discrimination has a venue, has a forum to be able to raise it. And I'm not going to get into any cost shifting measures that would be applicable of Pennsylvania law. That's already well-established case law, but I would like to hear from my fellow council members what they're thinking.
What
Coletta?
you're asking for would be the case whether or not there were fines in the ordinance. Okay, that's all I have.
Wait, Coletta and then Brad.
Basically, as I've been listening to this and my experience with it, it's interesting that it comes down to, as Solicitor Corbel said, do we want a group of our residents to hear of these complaints and at least direct where they need to go, or whether we in the ordinance abdicate it and push it upstream. And I think that there is something to be said for having a local board. When we talk about 5 people, they are not, I think, the ones that would necessarily be handing down the final decision. It sounds to me as though this is shaping up more as, will we have a local board that will listen to the complaint and then figure out and make a recommendation of where it needs to go. If my understanding is on point with that, I would certainly support that type of arrangement.
They would serve in essence as a gatekeeper.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea.
Brad?
So I'm wrestling with some of the same points that Coletta is making. She kind of stole my thunder a bit, but I think when Steve put it the way he phrased it, it definitely made me feel a bit more comfortable on 2 fronts. One, most of this is going to get adjudicated in court anyway above us. And so I'm perfectly comfortable with that. And I do think that it would be a very powerful statement of our values as a community and where we see in general a large portion of the country go. And as a microcosm, that to have people in our community, to quote Mr. Corbel, stand and pass judgment about the values of, that's not the exact quote, but I do feel very comfortable with that. So based on our discussion, I think I'm also, I would support it in its current form.
Thank you. If I may add a little anecdote, well, a little bit of a story, going off of Mr. Krause's discussion of how much of a stance or how much of a statement that it makes to prospective residents. Whenever I first moved into Crafton back in 2017, some of you may know I'm in the townhouses. So being in a townhouse, it's kind of enjoying it is kind of dependent on having a good neighbor or a good relationship with your neighbor. So whenever I first met my neighbor immediately adjacent to me, I was a little hesitant because as a member of the LGBT, you don't always know how people are going to react just by looking at them. Some people positive, some people negative. So whenever I met my neighbor, I wasn't sure of Crafton overall, of how accepting it would become after moving here. But so I was hesitant at that time to tell her. I think passing an ordinance like this tells future residents that as a community, we don't care if you're gay, straight, bi, trans, gender nonconforming. We don't care about race, religion, national origin. We want you to come here and be yourself. And I think going off of Brad's statement, Mr. Krause's statement, that this makes a statement, it does.
I would concur. And from what I
I-
understand, you
I credit
cleared,
that one
you,
to Steve. Sorry. I mean,
Yeah.
that was Steve's statement, not mine.
I'm just the lawyer.
You had said that it makes a statement, so that's why I was just attributing it to you, Mr. Carl.
and from what I understand, Ed, you have a wonderful neighbor.
Yes, yes. Hindsight, I don't know why I was ever so worried about letting her know that I was engaged to a man versus a woman. So.
Well, I guess that's a point to be made that, you know, I don't think there's a way to legislate interpersonal relationships between neighbors or friends or whomever. And so there's never going to be a utopia in which we can legislate all of these things, hatred or bigotry, out of existence. But, you know, so maybe we would have passed an ordinance and someone might still have a lousy neighbor who doesn't accept them. But I think that overall, it is a statement and a testament to say that, you know, the American ideal of life, liberty, and pursuit of all the things that were engendered in our cultural DNA is still there. And while we ebb and flow back and forth, there's still room to fulfill on that promise for future generations and for others. And I hope, you know, places like Crafton, whether it's very small, maybe it's technically insignificant, you know, in the long scheme of things, but I think change at any level always starts from the grassroots and grows. And it takes boroughs and townships and counties and then states and then regions to change things. We've seen a lot of change and we've seen a lot of reactive change. So, you know, I don't think we should be naive to think that, you know, we can change people's hearts and minds, but I think things like this go a long way for our kids and, you know, their kids as well.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to add?
So I guess my question is, coming out of this discussion, is this then, do we need any to direct any potential changes in the ordinance before we have it on our next agenda for voting to move forward?
That would be my question as well, whether or not this is an action item based on the ordinance that has been prepared.
I guess the only thing would be whether or not we want to keep the ability of this commission to levy fees or fines versus just to act as a gatekeeper function.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Steve, is there anything that we can do to, like, let's say, recoup any court costs, or if there's a finding or judgment, however it will proceed?
Nah, I mean, that's really for the participants, not the borough, because we would technically be out of it, right?
Okay.
So
I think what maybe Philip is talking about is how, for example, you go and file a complaint at magistrate court, and if the plaintiff is successful at magistrate court, the cost of a complaint shifts to like a defendant or something like that, and it may, I guess, pay for, if we had counsel, we would have to probably have counsel there, his or her time in helping to evaluate that case. Is that what you're talking about, Mr. Lavasser?
Mhm. Yeah.
No, but a complaint of this nature would not go to the magistrate. There's no such mechanism at the
Mr. Manager, I
magistrate
was
level
using that
to
as an
address that.
example.
Okay.
yeah, I would have to think that through as to whether or not we could require that. I mean, I think my advice would be let me get my hands back into it, review it, and if we can make a tweak like that or remove the fines, etc., you know, council can look at this one more time. Like I could have it ready for the next meeting, not for a vote, but for additional review or whatever, and then we can be directed and adopted in October. Because we still need time to advertise it, etc. And you know, in 2 weeks, it's still kind of tight.
Right.
Yeah, so I think I was referring to being in good enough shape with it at the next meeting to authorize to advertise.
Yeah, that's more reasonable, I think. Yep.
I should have been more clear.
Okay. All right. So I think, Steve, you have your direction. May I proceed to the next topic?
Yes, I think we're all done.
All right. We had an executive discussion, executive session discussion prior to this meeting. We had the library lease as a topic, and there's no action at this time. Anything to add, Mr. Corbel?
I have my marching orders, and I'll be communicating directly with the library's attorney.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, Shade Tree Commission. We had a letter of interest from resident Mr. John Oliverio, 39 North Emily, and a letter of interest for the rec board, Miss Krista Young, 50 Rogers Ave. Does anybody have any questions about the two letters that were received and their desire to serve on those boards and commissions? Hearing no, go ahead.
I would say, given their interest, let's move forward.
All right. Hearing no objection, I'm going to put that on the business agenda so we can vote to appoint. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Oliverio and Ms. Young, for stepping forward to participate in those boards and commissions. All right, Halloween discussion. Russ, you want to talk about that?
I've gotten many inquiries from other managers as to what Crafton is considering to do for Halloween in the COVID environment. I was going to let the mayor decide, but I realized that's probably not what he wants to do. I was just kidding, Mayor, by the way. But it is something that people are asking and calling as to whether Crafton's going to have Halloween. I have no answer for them. I don't know if any.
Isn't that all on the mayor? It's all on the mayor, right?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
I can tell you that that social media and some of our residents have decided that if we do not have Halloween, they will be having a protest that will be walking the streets about the same time that Halloween would be happening, and urging that for social distancing, they bring their kids in, wear masks, and maybe some residents might want to throw out some treats. So that's what I'm hearing.
Like a protest as in a protest, or just a Halloween parade?
Basically what they're saying is, yeah, regardless of what the borough decides to do, there may be a certain number of residents that will just be going ahead with their right to have Halloween, and there might be some residents who would also go forward with their right to give treats to those young Halloweeners.
So like a rump Halloween, like the rump parliament. Gotcha. Got it. I would think that this would be a no-brainer in the sense that most trick-or-treaters are wearing masks. So, you know,
yeah,
that fulfills some of the requirement, and it's a socially distant event.
Yeah. Jim, you were going to say something there.
Yeah, I thought about this earlier, and this is what I came up with. If you want to go out and trick or treat, do it. If you don't want to trick or treat, stay home. If you want to give out candy, do it. If you don't want to give out candy, don't open your door. It's that simple. The government can't just go ahead and make everybody's lives every day because of Halloween. It's crazy.
So in other words, what you just described, Jim, is every Halloween ever known to man, because that's what happens. Half the neighborhood is giving out candy and the other half is not. Some kids are at home, some kids are not, correct?
Yeah, and why should we get involved in this? Halloween, you know, I got in trouble last year for postponing Halloween because of the weather. I am not going to get involved in Halloween on COVID. If you want to go out and trick or treat, have a ball. If you don't, like I said, stay home.
Well, I'm coming to your house. I know that. And we're knocking on your door.
I'll be giving out candy.
Mayor gives those full-size candy bars, I heard.
I have two ninjas, and they're coming over. They're wearing their ninja masks, but they'll be over.
Well, I give out the full-size candy bars, and nobody wants to walk up my stairs. So this year, I'm going to put a launch tube. I'm going to connect the PVC pipes together. I'm going to just send it down to the street. I saw it on Facebook. It looked awesome. I'm going to do it.
Well,
My other neighbor.
doing that on a pulley for years.
I know. I'm catching up. I was inspired.
In all seriousness, no, I actually agree with the mayor. Everything he said was absolutely correct. I feel that there's been a huge disruption in the day-to-day lives of most Craftonites and Americans in general. And some of our little ones are being robbed of school experiences, or maybe that's a good thing for some of them, I don't know, but a lot of them are missing out on some of the social interaction, and there would be no way to enforce this anyway, and most residents are going to go out and protest with a second Halloween. So I feel personally, as one member of this body, no need to intercede here and make things more difficult than they need to be. The only thing I would suggest is, like, maybe we put out a small kind of thing from the borough here. We give out one free use of the community room or something for those who wear the most masks, or the best mask, or how many kids we can count with masks on. If there is ever a time, Crafton, to actually wear your mask, this would be the holiday to do it, period. So let's see if we can all be wearing the best. I have a werewolf mask upstairs. I'll wear that, and I think that'll solve the problem. So that's where I stand on this. I think we should go ahead and just leave it alone.
So in all seriousness, though, Mayor Bloom, every other Halloween, we provided a certain amount of police protection, right? Or are the crosswalk guards out? Because there's some logistics issues here to discuss, right?
Yeah, they will be discussed. As we've done in the past, the fire department will come out, and the police department will be out and maintaining order in the streets.
If I may make, and maybe Mr. Coble can get involved, just as a CYA provision, maybe Mr. Mayor, we can suggest to the fire department or the police department, suggest just regurgitating the social distancing recommendations, recommending masks, recommending washing hands and all of that stuff, as well as throwing in there too as well the typical parents look over your kids' candy, that stuff, whenever we just put that up.
Well, that's been going on for years and years, that the parents check the children's candy when they get home, but there's no way to enforce.
Oh, I'm not saying enforce it, I'm just saying
and stuff like that.
Just recommendations, just as the suggestions to just, there's obviously enforcement's counterintuitive. I'm just saying that we put it up as, even though Halloween's going forward, we still recommend you social distance as best as you can, and still the best practice safe, I guess, trick-or-treating, if you will.
I fully expect that there to be some sort of, whatever your opinion is on what's going on, I do anticipate there will be some guidance or commentary from health departments, local or state or CDC, about best Halloween trick-or-treating practices. And I'm sure we could put that on a website, etc. I really don't see an issue or a real risk that the borough will suffer any liability if someone claims they got COVID because they trick-or-treated in Crafton. I don't see that. I think there's a big causation issue there, and I wouldn't sweat it. I would just follow the science, follow the lead of the health departments, and you just have to be nimble. What they're telling everybody is it's really hard to predict what you should or shouldn't do more than a couple weeks away. And so Halloween is 6 weeks out. So, sit here today and it sounds like everybody's okay with having a socially distant Halloween. But if something happens, you got to deal with it, right? I don't foresee anything that would be so horrific that you wouldn't do it, other than a rainstorm that the mayor postponed it for last year, and a lot of other communities did. But I think you're giving folks good guidance today, and we'll see what some of the experts have to say about how to safely trick or treat this year in the very near future.
I'm an expert on checking my kids' candy by tasting all the stuff.
That's not how you're supposed to do it, Mr. Kratz.
Oh, my apologies to my children then.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the lively discussion on that. And Mayor, I love your mask.
Both of them.
Way to go.
I have plenty of them.
All right. I'm going to move forward to community announcements. The borough parks are open and shelters available for Crafton residents to rent. The borough strongly advises that social distancing should be maintained and all rules and regulations set forth by either the Commonwealth or the county be followed. The borough office will remain closed to the public. However, staff is available during normal business hours and can be reached via telephone or email. There's a drop box in the rear of the building for any written correspondence. Any changes to this action will be posted on the borough website and Savvy Citizen. The Crafton Library is open with COVID-19 safety limitations Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and Tuesday, Thursday from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. The annual Shred event sponsored by Senator Fontana and Representative Deasy will be held at the Crafton Park on Saturday, September 19th from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. or until the dumpsters are full. The Crafton Rec Board is introducing a Crafton Haunted House Tour that will be a guided driving tour of Crafton's spookiest residences. Please submit your family-friendly home stories to the Rec Board by September 18th at recreation@craftonborough.com. And remember, your house does not need to be haunted to participate. So if you're going to dress your house up in any particular way and you want to be on the house tour for Halloween, please don't hesitate to participate in this fun event. If you remember a couple of years ago, we had a haunted borough hall, and we may do something again like that. And so again, have fun with the season. It's been a tough year for everybody, and we'll try to play it by ear as we move forward. Again, the newsletter went out. Hopefully everybody received theirs. Any questions about schedules or any events, please don't hesitate to call the office. Again, appreciate everybody in the administration for putting that together. I think Chrisma does a nice job pulling all those pieces and assembling that for us. So again, thank you, Chrisma. Really appreciate that. So Manager McKibben, do you have anything to leave us with? Keep up the good work, everybody at the borough, and thank you for your time this evening. I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Bye.
See y'all.
See ya.